Do you want more homebrew? Well, I got you 10 simple homebrew house rules coming up. You guys liked my homebrew rules for combat so much, it got over that 100 likes and you unlocked this video. And if you guys really like these topics, I'll keep making regular videos on homebrew stuff as well, which is honestly what most of my stuff is now. And I would love to be known as the Homebrew D&D channel. So these house rules are specifically not for combat. This list is more about general game functions and roleplay. The top pinned comment will have a link to each one if you want to go straight there. Here we go. Number 1, potions as a bonus action. Now I feel like this should just be a part of the game. Now under this rule, it's still a full action to feed someone else a potion, but it's just a bonus action for yourself. This includes healing potions and other potions as well. Number 2, proficient help actions. In my first house rule video, link right here, I go over a buffed help action. But this rule means that you can only take the help action if you're proficient at the thing you're trying to help them with. So if a small wizard wants to help the barbarian push a boulder, that's not going to cut it. Unless the wizard's creative enough at describing some way, maybe using magic, that he could. You could have the wizard make a spell check to see if he can do it or not, but for me, creativity is king. Number 3, a new healing potion system. Greater, superior, supreme. I don't see my players memorizing what the names are and what the dice that match up to it is. So here's how it works. There's levels to every healing potion. A level 1 healing potion is 1d6 plus 1 times your constitution modifier. As I've said before, I base a lot of my homebrew on currently existing rules. And this is a very similar process to rolling hit dice on level ups or for short rests. So a level 5 healing potion is easy to remember. 5d6 plus 5 times your constitution modifier. This chart also has how much gold each of these things are. I did some math, and the cost of these at each power level match up pretty well with the original healing potions compared to this new system. I also think this is cool because the lowest level healing potion normally is 44 plus 4, which is a maximum of 20 health. And in this system with the level 1 healing potions, the most you could possibly roll with 1d6 plus your constitution modifier is 11. So this gives me as the DM a little bit more control in what kind of healing potions I want to give my party. And this also lets those beefier characters with higher constitution modifiers get a little bit more out of each healing potion. And that feels fine to me. This simple, scalable system also lets you dial up your healing potions if you need to. The largest healing potions I usually end up giving out for high-level players is about level 5. All my campaigns have used this system, and the players really like it. I'll have a chart for this down in the description for something you can print out and have for yourself. Number 4, always roll for health on level ups. Controversial. I know. For me, I see the dice are connected to your character in a very unique way. It all starts off when you roll for your stats at the beginning. That makes your character. Time out. I've already made a video on how I roll for stats, and it's a very unique way that combines both balanced math with rolling for stats to make a perfect character. So if you're interested in that, click right here and check out how I do it. Okay, so that same connection that your character has with the dice when you make them, I feel should still be there when they level up. And I know what people say about this. It feels really bad when you roll really low, and all this time leveling up has led to this big letdown. But don't worry, I have solutions for that too. Because man, I can feel the energy at my table when my players level up and they get ready to roll their hit dice. And when they roll high, oh, yes. But wait, what if that big bad barbarian of yours keeps rolling low? Here's what I do. First of all, as usual, I let my players re-roll once, multiple times. But here's 2 unique things that I do to help solve this problem if I feel like my players' health has fallen behind. The stories in your game are about struggle and conflict. So why not have this bad health situation turn into an in-game plot reason as to why it's happening? Here's an example. A player of mine contracted something called abyssal sickness from recklessly going into the abyss. And that same player had been rolling really low for their health for about 2 or 3 levels. I connected these 2 things together to be part of her story. She was sick, and it was getting worse. I actually added a mechanic to the sickness that would reduce her max health, making this health problem even worse, and the player had to play really smart, because they weren't before. But after a few sessions, they finally found the shaman that they'd been looking for to cure her of this sickness. There was a big suspenseful ritual performed, and she was cured. She got all that health back that she'd lost from the sickness, and I gave her bonus health. After the ritual was completed, I told her that she felt so full of life, roll 2 more hit dice. She permanently boosted her health, and I've never seen a player be so excited to roll hit dice. That was such a cool moment at the table and a mini story arc for her that would have never happened if it didn't have this hit dice system. And the second thing I do brings me to the next thing on this list. Number 5, Bonus Lvl Up Perks. Now I asked my players, and this was all of their favorite homebrew from anything that I've done. I did an entire video on this already, and the link for that's right here. Basically what it is as the DM, I have a conversation with my players as to where they see their character going. What do they want to be able to do? What's their class fantasy? Instead of only giving them the standard things that they get from the book, I give them a bonus level up perk. Now I go over this in the video, but this is something I make myself that I think the character would really like. I just give them something cool. At low levels, it starts off as something small, and as they level up, I give them bigger things that I feel like fills the gap in what they're wanting to do with their character. This makes their class feel unique and custom to them, and lets them play the character the way they want. So back to that low health problem. If your big frontliner barbarian has been rolling low on health, and his class fantasy is to be a bit beefier, or you as the DM really feel like he's been falling behind the average. When he levels up, give him a bonus perk of rolling another hit dice. Sweet! And like I said, this was all my players' favorite homebrew, so yours might just love it too. Number 6, no passive perception. Ever since I started DMing, passive perception has just felt bad to me. I've had a dungeon delving rogue in my party whose passive perception was over 20. And it feels super lame to me with no rolls at all to just say, oh yeah, you see this, and you see this, and you see this. This also ties into the take 20 roll where you can just take 20 minutes for automatic success that I don't like either. I just do what all DMs should do anyway. Know your players' characters and their strengths. I know who in the group has a very high perception. So those times that they're walking around town and you have a plot hook over in the corner of some shady figures, I'll just tell that player specifically, you notice a shady group of people down the street. Now I know what I just described kind of sounds like passive perception, but I just see it as me knowing my players and what they would automatically succeed at. If the big barbarian wants to flip a table, no check required. If the paladin with a high charisma score makes a great argument, no persuasion check required. So basically, for those lower stakes things, I do keep in mind what my players are good at and who would have a higher passive score for it. But if it's something big that I ask them to make a roll on, I don't let them just fall back on their passive score. Number 7, skill variant checks. This is a super simple one. All this is creative skill checks. I challenge you to look at your character sheet and come up with a creative way to make a skill check with an ability score modifier that normally isn't assigned to it. Here's some examples. My barbarian one time wanted to dig through some loot in a dragon's lair that was buried in gold. Rage looting and critical role, anybody? He described that he wanted to hulk out and just start burrowing through all the gold. So I asked him to make a strength investigation check. He's using his strength modifier for an investigation check. I feel like that checks out. Another one that happens all the time is an intimidation check using your strength modifier. Now, if you let your player do it in this way, make sure they are using strength to intimidate them. I'll come up with one right now. If one of your player's characters has a really high charisma score and they're talking to one of their childhood friends in game and they think they're lying to them, I would let them ask for a charisma insight check. That character would know his friend's personality and body language so well, he should know. Now, I've never had that check happen at my table, but I just came up with that right now. Number 8, no evil players. Evil players. I would have to have a very experienced player that's played with me before to trust them to handle an evil character. Now, time out. I don't really do alignments, at least not how it's set up in the book. I talk to my players about it and they understand the difference between good and evil, lawful and chaotic, but I don't have my players choose an alignment. If there's enough interest on it, I'll do a whole video on different ways that I've handled alignment, including adding a 7th stat in one of my games. But that's its own video. So when I say evil, I'm just talking about a character that's extremely selfish or murderous. Alright. It takes a lot of skill to pull off an evil character. As the player, you have to understand that your character is evil, but you don't want them to be. The player should want a redemption arc for their character to see what kind of path they take to become a hero. Unless you're doing an evil campaign, then everybody just go for it. But even with an evil campaign, I'd want my players to be a team. Yeah, there would be some backstabbing in the beginning, but the players would know that going into an evil campaign and should talk about character arcs towards a common goal. Number 9, the I know a guy system. Here's how it works. If your players are ever in a town and there's that classic situation where they're looking for somebody, or it's the town they literally grew up in and they're looking around for the town blacksmith, what your players can do in this system is they can say, I know a guy. And if it makes sense, they could describe someone that they know in town. Now stop. We all know players don't flush out their backstory entirely. It would be crazy to expect them to list off every person they knew in town, relationships that they had, people they knew. It's hard enough to make them write a backstory in the first place. Link right here for some help on that. My players don't use this system all the time, and every time they have, it's led to some pretty fun interactions. The group needed to know about some high rollers in the city. She said she knew someone that worked with the stagecoach system, and they transported materials and supplies all throughout the city, including into the wealthy district. And this is the funnest part. I said, describe them for me. And now your player on the spot gets to plug in an NPC into the game from their backstory. They can describe what they look like, what they maybe sound like, and now you have to play them as a DM, which your players can really get a kick out of custom making an NPC for you to play on the spot. But that's the great part. They created it, you just get a roll with it. The last part here is there is a role to this. I described the group going to their stagecoach business, and upon walking in, she saw the NPC right in the back. I then asked her to make a charisma check. You could assign advantage or disadvantage to this roll depending on how well they described it, but this charisma check dictates how good of a relationship they have. Usually for me, if it's below 5, they're hated, and if it's above 15, they're happy to see him. Roll low and this person hates you, and you actually might owe them money for breaking a stagecoach before. Roll high, and they might help you out with a stagecoach and get you into that wealthy district. She ended up rolling in the middle for this example, so he kind of remembered her from before and was pretty helpful with information, but nothing too huge. I love this so much more than what I used to do. Have my players make some check of some kind, they talk to some random person I come up with on the spot, and they find out some level of information. Super basic. This system's way more fun. Number 10 is Thematic Progression. This rule should definitely be something you talk about with your players to get on the same page with. Session 0 is great for that. Simply put, is any new thing your character can do has to make sense. It's always felt bad to me that once a wizard reaches level 5, they just spontaneously know Fireball. And the warlock gets to level 9, and now they just know Dominate Person. And the same thing's true for a multi-classing standpoint. Let's say a player wants to multi-class 1 level into Barbarian. But how? All this means is I try and encourage my players to have just a little bit of a roleplay reason how this thing happens, which is really cool to see them do. And I'd say this process of growing their character helps really connect them to their character. This also lets you get into your players' heads a little bit and see where they want to go with their character. So a warlock of mine that would want Dominate Person, I'd want to see them push the limits of that Charm Person or Crown of Madness spell. Here's an example for that wizard. The player already knew he wanted Fireball, and there was a moment in combat where there's 3 enemies left standing all pretty close to each other. But how he described it was that he wanted to take the rays of Scorching Ray and try and merge them together into one massive orb that hit them all. I saw where he was going with this, and I loved it. This was so cool for me and the other players to see him unlock Fireball in game. He made his 3 attack rolls, but one of them missed. This was such a cool creative moment, and the combat was pretty much already over anyway. I had that one missed shot deal half damage anyway, like a Fireball would. Player felt awesome, and the next time he leveled up, he picked Fireball, and it totally made sense. 2 examples of thematic progression in multi-classing. Vaxel Don from Critical Role. That was a huge moment with him and the Raven Queen. He made a promise to a god and then reflected that by multi-classing Paladin. So beautiful. A fighter of mine wanted to multi-class in the Barbarian, but just 1 level. We both talked about how it wouldn't make sense that he would just randomly be angry all the time now, just for some in-game mechanic that he wanted to have. So what's the story? He simply said, I want to feel loss. So I weaved a small story thread into the campaign down the path we were already going. Long story short, he lost his little sister, and she died in his arms. Now this was a big moment for that character. The player didn't know what loss he was going to take to make him snap, but it was a beautiful roleplay moment to see him build up this anger inside. So now when he rages, there's something behind it. There's a purpose. You can apply this rule as strictly as you want, but I found just having this conversation during session 0, and then the players leading by example themselves, lead to some amazing character progression. And there you have it. 10 homebrew rules to make your game feel more alive. This channel really is becoming a homebrew channel, and I love it because I have so much stuff to give you guys. And I also have plenty more where that came from. Homebrews for character creation, each specific class, more rules on combat, death mechanics, and for magic, a new way to handle attunement, and an entire new magic system. But that's way too much for just one video. But I need to know if you guys want to see that. And so does YouTube. The more likes a video gets, the more people they show it to. And this video you guys unlocked yourselves by getting over 100 likes on my Homebrew Combat Rules video, link right here. So if this video gets 200 likes, I'll do another bonus video. And just keep them coming. And I have so much homebrew to offer you guys, I don't want to limit the topic to just one thing. So if we do get 200 likes, I'm going to go through the comments and read what y'all want the most and make one on that. And I'd like to thank all 7 of my patrons right here. I have different reward tiers that give shout outs, actually be able to vote on what video's next, and one-on-one coaching. For a couple weeks now, I've been having some coaching sessions with Jacob L. I asked him what he wanted help with, and we've been homebrewing an entire campaign, answering questions along the way that he'll be running soon. A big thanks to all you guys for help supporting this channel. My main goal of this channel is to give you quick, efficient videos on resources and helpful ideas. I appreciate each one of you guys so much because each subscriber goes a long way, especially when you're starting out. So if you like these videos, think about subscribing and turn on that notification bell so you don't miss the next one. I post new videos every Saturday. So until then, stay creative and think outside that box. Peace.